My parents started living in my house, and when my older sister also moved in, she asked for the master bedroom and half of the house's personal space. I kicked them all out. So I'm 26M, living with my parents in a house I pay for in full. It sounds pretty basic, but it's way more complicated than that. Let me start from the beginning. I bought a house in the city last year. I cover the entire mortgage, pay for all the bills, groceries, you name it. My parents, Liz, 52F, and Tom, 55 meters, both retired teachers, don't pay a dime. It wasn't a move back home because I couldn't afford rent situation either. In fact, I make good money as a software engineer, and I wanted to be closer to job opportunities in the city. Plus, I thought it would be nice to help them out after they spent years supporting me. It's a nice 3-bedroom house, nothing extravagant, but cozy with a backyard and a spacious living room. Since I pay for everything, I claim the master bedroom. It has a walk-in closet and its own bathroom, which is clutch because I hate sharing a bathroom with anyone. The second bedroom is my home office. I work from home about 80% of the time, so I set it up with dual monitors, a comfy chair, and everything I need. The third bedroom was left as a guest room for when family visited. At first, everything was great. My parents were happy to be in the city and did their own thing while I worked and took care of the house. I didn't mind footing the bills because, hey, they're my parents and it felt good to be able to support them after all they'd done for me. But then things changed. One morning over breakfast, my mom dropped a casual bombshell. She mentioned that my older sister Jessica, 28F, and her husband Eric were thinking of moving to the city. Eric's wife is pregnant, and apparently they've been struggling. She said they could really use the help. I didn't think much of it at first. Jessica and Eric have always jumped from one bad situation to another, but I assumed if they moved, they'd get a small apartment nearby. That's when things took a turn I wasn't prepared for. A few days later, my mom sat me down with her best innocent tone and told me they had invited Jessica and Eric to come stay with us. Just for a little while, until they got back on their feet. Now, they didn't ask if I was okay with this. Oh no, they told me after they'd already invited them. I was still processing the whole thing when Jessica and Eric showed up with bags in hand, clearly planning to stay for the long haul. Here's the deal. Jessica and Eric moved in, and right off the bat, it was clear they had no plans to leave anytime soon. I'm already stressed, thinking about the extra expenses I'm going to incur. I'm paying for everything, groceries, utilities, the mortgage, everything. And now I've got 2 more people to support with no one asking how I feel about it. I love my sister, but Jessica is, well, not the most responsible person. She always finds herself in messy situations, and everyone else ends up bailing her out. Eric is nice enough, but he has this entitled attitude that rubs me the wrong way, like because she's pregnant, the world should cater to her. The tension started building almost immediately. A few days after they moved in, Eric started making these little comments. You know, the kind that seem harmless but are actually annoying as hell. Stuff like, this place is so big, it must be hard for you to clean it all by yourself, or we're gonna need a lot of space for the baby stuff when it gets here. I didn't think too much of it at first, but then one evening things escalated. Jessica and Eric pulled me aside and said they wanted to talk. I thought maybe they were going to apologize for the extra burden they were putting on me, or maybe offer to help out financially. But no, Eric, all casual, says, so we've been thinking it'd make more sense if we took the master bedroom. I blinked, thinking I must have misheard, but Jessica jumped in with, yeah, the baby's gonna need a lot of stuff. And your room has the walk-in closet and private bathroom. Let me remind you, I pay the mortgage. I pay for everything. And these 2 were sitting here, suggesting I give up my own room for them and their unborn child. The audacity hit me all at once. I managed to keep calm, and why don't you just take the guest room? It's plenty big. Eric gave me a look like I just suggested something outrageous. That room doesn't have a walk-in closet, he said. The baby's going to need space. I was done. I'm not giving up my room. You can have the guest room, or you can find somewhere else to stay. Jessica looked a little shocked, like she couldn't believe I wasn't just caving in. But Eric, he was downright offended. That's when I knew this wasn't going to end well. Things started going downhill fast the next couple of days. I noticed Jessica and Eric getting really comfortable. Their stuff was everywhere, shoes kicked off by the couch, baby magazines scattered on the dining table. Eric even started talking about where he was going to put the crib, like he had already decided that they were going to stay in the master bedroom. One day I had to go into the office for a meeting. When I got home, my blood ran cold. My personal stuff, clothes, computer monitor, everything was in the hallway. I stormed into the master bedroom, and there was Jessica, casually packing up the last of my things like it was no big deal. "What the hell are you doing?" I blurted out. She didn't even flinch. "Your mom said we could start moving in here. The baby's coming soon, and we need the space." I was livid. "I told you you're not taking my room." Jessica crossed her arms. "The guest room is too small." I wasn't having it. "I don't care. You're not taking my room. You can stay in the guest room or find somewhere else to live." At this point, Jessica was upset, but I didn't care. I stormed out of the room, grabbed my phone, and called my mom, who wasn't even home at the time. "Mom, did you tell Jessica and Eric they could move into my room?" There was a long pause. Finally, she admitted, "Well, I thought it would be the best solution. They need the space, and you've already got the office. It's not like you were using the master bedroom for much." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious? I pay the mortgage. I pay the bills. And you think it's okay for them to take over my room?" She tried to calm me down, saying it wasn't a big deal, but I was done listening. "I'm not giving them my room. If they don't move their stuff out, they're going to need to find another place to stay." When I hung up the phone with my mom, anger surged through me like never before. I was done. It wasn't enough that Jessica and Eric had invaded my house, taken over my space, and tried to make the rules. Now my own mother was siding with them. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but in that moment, I decided I wasn't going to let this go on any longer. That night, I called everyone into the living room for a talk. I sat on the couch, waiting for them to join me with their offended and entitled expressions. Jessica crossed her arms. Eric sat beside her with that smug look of someone who thinks they're already in control, and my parents came in wearing the faces of disappointment, as if I were the one in the wrong. "I need to be very clear about this," I began, keeping my voice steady, though I was boiling inside. "This is my house. I pay for everything here, and that's how it's going to stay. Jessica, Eric, you can either stay in the guest room or leave. And I don't want to hear another word about the master bedroom." Jessica scoffed, crossing her arms tighter. "You're being selfish. Can't you see we're doing this for the baby? It needs space. Space." I laughed, a sharp, sarcastic sound. "The baby isn't even born, and you're already acting like you own the place. It's just temporary." My mom tried to intervene, but I cut her off. "No, it's not temporary when people spread their stuff everywhere and try to take over my room while I'm out." Eric, with his condescending smile, leaned forward. "You're overreacting. We're family. Think about what's best for all of us." I locked eyes with him, unblinking. "You know what would be best? If you started looking for a place of your own." The silence that followed was heavy. Jessica's eyes widened, and Eric lost his smug composure for a second before regaining it. "You're kicking us out? If that's how you want to interpret it, then yes." My voice was firm. "And if you're still here tomorrow, I won't hesitate to change the locks." Jessica looked stunned, like she couldn't believe I wasn't caving. Eric, however, was livid. I could see it in his clenched jaw and narrowed eyes. But I didn't care. That night, I dragged all their belongings, shoes, baby magazines, bags, into the hallway and shut my bedroom door behind me. I knew the tension would only escalate, but I was ready for whatever came next. The next morning, unsurprisingly, they were still there. In fact, they seemed even more comfortable, acting as if they owned the place. That's when I decided it was time for my final move. I opened my laptop and searched for apartments far enough away to make it hard for them to return. I sent them a list of options, along with a message: "You have 1 week to move out." They ignored me. The following day, before heading to work, I called a locksmith. I had all the locks changed. Then I packed their things, every last item, and piled them in the yard. It wasn't the nicest way to do it, but I was beyond caring about being nice. While I was at work, my phone blew up with angry texts and calls from my mom and Jessica, demanding that I open the door. I ignored every single one of them. It was time to take a stand. When I got home, they were all waiting outside the front door, furious. My mom looked ready to explode, Jessica was in tears, and Eric gave me a glare that suggested he wanted to fight me right there. I smiled coldly and said, "I warned you." My mom began yelling about how I was tearing the family apart, but I didn't flinch. You can scream all you want, but I'm done being taken advantage of. Find another place to stay. I'm not your safety net anymore. They tried to threaten me with legal action, but I knew they didn't have a case. Good luck with that, I said, shrugging. I've already consulted a lawyer. You have no claim here. And with that, I left them standing outside in the drizzle that had started to fall. I turned on some music, sat down on my couch, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. I knew the emotional fallout would be messy, but I also knew I was finally setting boundaries. The next day, they rented a moving truck to collect their things. Jessica gave me a look of pure hatred, and Eric mumbled something under his breath. My mom didn't even meet my eyes, but I felt no regret. Sometimes, finding peace means making tough choices, and I was ready to move forward, unburdened by those who only knew how to take advantage. After everyone left and the house was finally quiet, I thought everything was resolved. For a few days, the sense of relief felt real. No more arguments, no more absurd demands, just me in control of my own space. But that peace was an illusion. It didn't take long for my family to start spreading a different narrative, casting me as the villain of the story. Soon, I started receiving messages and calls from relatives. Why did you kick out your pregnant sister? Or how could you throw your parents out? It was clear that Jessica and my parents had crafted their own version. A struggling couple with a baby on the way and aging parents who only wanted to stay close to family. And, of course, I was the heartless ingrate who refused to share his home. I tried explaining the situation to a few close relatives, but I quickly realized it was pointless. They had already chosen their side, and the truth didn't matter. Nobody wanted to hear that Jessica and Eric had invaded my space and tried to take my bedroom. People preferred a good family drama with clear heroes and villains. So, I decided I wouldn't waste any more time justifying myself. If they wanted to paint me as the villain, I'd let things play out. And this time, I'd make sure they paid for it. The days that followed tested my patience. My parents kept trying to guilt-trip me, calling constantly and saying I was tearing the family apart. Jessica and Eric sent passive-aggressive messages, implying I'd ruined their baby's future. I ignored them all. The time for keeping the peace was over. If they thought they could turn the family against me and walk away unscathed, they were in for a surprise. After much thought, I made my final decision. I called my lawyer and explained everything. He assured me the house was mine legally and that they had no grounds to return. With the property in my name and all expenses paid solely by me, there was no way they could win the case. While the lawsuit played out, I found out that Jessica and Eric were staying with various relatives, still complaining about the injustice they had suffered. I saw my chance. I contacted each of those relatives and told them the truth. They hadn't been kicked out unfairly. They had invaded my home and tried to take my bedroom. I didn't need to exaggerate or manipulate the facts. The truth was damning enough on its own. Slowly, those relatives began distancing themselves from Jessica and Eric. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. I was ready. Jessica and Eric walked into the courtroom hand in hand, accompanied by my parents, wearing smug expressions, as if they'd already won. But the moment my lawyer presented the evidence, their confidence began to crumble. The documentation was ironclad. I was the sole owner. I paid all the bills, and they had no formal agreement to stay. When the judge asked why they had tried to take my bedroom and overstep their boundaries, Jessica stammered, and Eric looked away. Even their lawyers seemed uncomfortable. The judge's ruling was swift. The house was legally mine, and they had no right to return. The lawsuit was dismissed, and the judge reprimanded them for their abusive and opportunistic behavior. Outside the courtroom, my mom tried once more to approach me and apologize, but I was done. I hope you've learned something from this, I said calmly, turning away without another word. In the following months, I heard that Jessica and Eric finally managed to rent a small apartment, but without family support, they struggled. Their marriage, already on shaky ground, began to fall apart under the weight of their problems. As for my parents, they continued drifting from one relative's house to another, unable to find stability. The manipulative cycle that had always worked for them had finally turned against them. Meanwhile, my life thrived. I refocused on my career, climbed the professional ladder, and built meaningful relationships. I realized I didn't need a family that only saw me as a crutch. My house became the home I had always envisioned. Every time I walked into my master bedroom, my space with my walk-in closet and private bathroom, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just the relief of being alone. It was the certainty that I had made the right choice by setting firm boundaries. I didn't need to shout, fight, or seek explosive revenge. The sweetest revenge was moving on and letting them face the consequences of their actions. In the end, the real victory was finding peace and watching from a distance as those who tried to tear me down sank under the weight of their own choices.